आज म तपाईलाई B.Ed सेकेन्ड इयरको यो मेजर इंग्लिश सब्जेक्ट रिडिङ्स फर द न्यू होराइजन्स भन्ने मेजर इंग्लिश सब्जेक्टको चाहिँ आज म तपाईलाई युनिट 4 को एजुकेसन एन्ड ल्याङ्ग्वेज टिचिङ भन्ने यो युनिट 4 को चाहिँ आज म तपाईलाई 5 र 6 को चाहिँ लेसन 5 र 6 को चाहिँ म तपाईलाई केही सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु शेयर गर्नेछु। अघिल्लो भिडियोमा मैले तपाईलाई 1 देखि 4 सम्म चाहिँ सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु शेयर गरिसकेको छु। अब म तपाईलाई युनिट लेसन 5 र 6 को चाहिँ म तपाईलाई चाहिँ सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु शेयर गर्नेछु। यो चाहिँ रहेको छ लेसन 5 आइडियोलोजी इन द क्लासरुम। अनि क्वेशन रहेको छ एमा डिस्कस भ्यूज अफ रिचार्ड ओमन एन्ड मुखर्जी on literature. According to Mukherjee, literature provides a lens through which readers look at the world. Point of view is the way the author allows us to see and hear what is going on. Skillful authors can fix readers' attention on exactly the detailed opinion or emotion the author wants to emphasize by manipulating the point of view of the story. Oman's view is based on prophylactic view of literature. According to Oman, common people do have deeper layer of human anxiety and hope and then treatment of trouble. However, there is no trouble for those who hold power. Similarly, children and young minds may not have clear understanding of how their society actually functions and what kind of role literature. Mukherjee provides us 4 major issues of literature. First, literature is more than form. Second, ideology and social class of the writer should be understood in the context while analyzing the literary texts like poems, stories, dramas and novels, etc. Third, the role of literature is vital as a social institution. Fourth, the main role of teachers and critics in literature is to discuss critically the dominant social and cultural values. त्यसैगरी अर्को रहेको छ यहाँ बी मा rewrite the story of the perfume C in your own words. This story, The Perfume C, is written by Margaret Lawrence, one of the popular Canadian writer of 20th century. This story based on the economic and cultural domination of the Third World. It is set in Ghana on the eve of independence from British rule. The colonial administration was leaving, and this has caused financial difficulties to Mr. Archipelago and Dory, who operate the only beauty parlor in a small town. The equipments of the parlor were old and antique one, and the parlor operation not much to their liking. Mr. Archipelago and Dory have no customers left after the colonizers had left. The customers have decreased and nobody visits the parlor for several weeks. One day, Mr. Tachi, the landlord, came and demanded rent. After the arrival of Tachi, the situation of the parlor was changed because the daughter of Mr. Tachi, named Mercy Tachi, was like a city girl, modern girl, and was a fat customer for his product. One day, Mercy visited the salon and come out like a modern girl. archipelago and Dory were saved by the act of mercy. This story shows archipelago's survival, and it also shows that how the native customers were born after Britishers left the country. The story shows that the native people were influenced by the white culture in African country like Ghana. The native people slowly imitated the lifestyle of white people. In this way, this story raises the post-colonial issues and the political dominance of the colonizers in the various forms over the third world countries. त्यसै गरी अर्को क्वेशन नम्बर यहाँनिर सी रहेको छ. What do you understand by the colony of the Raj? Explain its main features. The statement "the colony of the Raj" refers to the British Empire. During and after Second World War, almost two-thirds of the world was under the rule of British Empire. Britishers were dominating the colonized people economically, culturally, and politically. The colonized people were regarded as inferior and physically and mentally weak. They were regarded uncivilized, savage, and wild. After they left the colonized, various linguistic, political, and cultural influences were left behind, and which has still governed the mind of the people of third world countries. त्यसै गरी क्वेशन नम्बर यहाँ डी मा रहेको छ. What did the author expect from his students? Why was he dismayed? The author expected to his students to read and interpret Margaret Lauren's story, The Perfume Sea, from the perspective of post-colonial thought. The author also wanted to explore and find out the economic, political, and cultural domination of the imperialist countries to the third world countries' people. त्यसै गरी क्वेशन नम्बर ई मा रहेको छ नि. Do you think it proper to judge a literary work solely on its universal appeal and disregard its socio-political context? Elucidate. Obviously not. I think it is not fair to judge a literary work only on the universal appeal by disregarding its socio-political context. Every people have their own socio-political and cultural status. They have their own sacrifice, suffering, sorrow, and happiness. Their happiness and sorrow must be regarded and brought into light. History should be written on the basis of their own myths. Their toils and contributions should not be left to mix in the dust. Hence, the literature of the third world culture shouldn't be suppressed and subdued by powerful rich nations. त्यसै गरी क्वेशन नम्बर यहाँनिर एपमा रहेको छ. How are pedagogy and research related? Pedagogy is the study of teaching methods or science of teaching. It makes a use of instructive strategies. The word research is composed of two morphemes and search. The dictionary defines the former as a prefix meaning again or over again, and the latter was a verb meaning to examine closely and carefully. So it describes a careful, systematic, or patient study and investigation in some field of knowledge undertaken to establish fact of principles. Research has been the matter of concern not only for academicians but also for professionals in various fields, and it has covered a vast range of theoretical and practical concern. Research and pedagogy are interlinked. Research provides some new knowledge or insights in different areas of pedagogy. त्यसै गरी क्वेशन नम्बर जी मा राखेको छ नि local reality is important as global feature. Discuss. It is said literature is a mirror to the society. It is the criticism of life. Literature expresses and communicates thoughts, feelings and attitudes of life. It grows directly out of life. All literature without any connection to life is without life. It reflects life in society. The life with all its beauties and ugliness, sorrows and happiness and problems and developments. It is the vital record of what man witnesses in life and society. Similarly, the literature reflects the socio-political context, since literature is the mirror of the society. Social issues should be given top priority. Any literature work has to be evaluated with due focus on local reality without taking global feature for granted. यो चाहिँ लेसन 5 को रहेको छ भने त्यसैगरी अब यहाँनिर रहेको छ लेसन 6 को द सोर्सेस अफ इंग्लिश भोकाबुलरी. ए नम्बरमा तपाईहरु हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. Why is English so rich in synonyms? English is so rich in synonyms because of combination of Latin, French and native elements. It has been said that English has synonyms at each level: popular, literary and learned. Question number B ma, what was the reason for an objection of classical borrowings? Although the classical borrowing initiated in late medieval times, it was with the revival of learning in the Renaissance times. It was with the revival of learning in the Renaissance that classical really became popular. The new words borrowed supported for the increased possibilities of expression, but at the same time they were accompanied by controversy and were rejected in many cases. Besides enriching the language, they also made certain stylistic registers beyond reach to masses and so widened the educational gap between the classes. For many people, the semantic relations between everyday words and the corresponding scholarly Latinate words are not immediately obvious and have to be learned. Question number C. What are the 3 major events that have deeply influenced modern English? Modern period dates from about 1500 and runs up to the present. The 3 major events that have deeply influenced modern English: the intellectual expansion of the Renaissance as well as the age of discovery, beginning of imperialism and colonialism on a world scale, and movement of people from the British Isles and the rest of Europe outwards, immigration of people from the Empire Commonwealth to the British Isles. त्यसैगरी अर्को यहाँ क्वेशन नम्बर डी मा रहेको छ. Language is primarily based on the principle of arbitrariness. To what extent do you agree with this statement? Justify your answer with some examples. According to Block and Trag 1942 5, a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which social group cooperates. What is striking about this definition is that it makes no appeal except indirectly and by implication to the communicative function of language. Instead, it puts all the emphasis upon its social function. The most obvious instance of arbitrariness in language and the one that is most frequently mentioned have to do with the link between form and meaning, between signal and message. There are sporadic, irregular in all language of what is traditionally referred to as onomatopoeic, the non-arbitrary connection between form and meaning of such onomatopoeic word are cuckoo, cuckoo, pewit, crash in English, but the vast majority of the words in all languages are non-onomatopoeic. The connection between their form and their meaning is arbitrary because given the form it is impossible to predict the meaning, and given the meaning it is impossible to predict the form. Even if there exist some exceptions to the principles of arbitrariness, I agree up to the great extent with the statement that language is primarily based on the principle of arbitrariness. यो चाहिँ क्वेशन नम्बर डी को रहेको छ। यो चाहिँ ग्रामर पनि भएको कारणले गर्दा चाहिँ अलि लजिकको कुराहरु यसमा भएको कारणले गर्दा यो बोर लाग्न नि सक्छ। मैले जस्ट तपाईलाई पढेर मात्र सुनाइरहेको छु, यो एक्सप्लेन गरेर कुनै पनि कुराहरु मैले तपाईलाई चाहिँ सुनाइरहेको छैन। यो चाहिँ त्यो एक्सप्लेनको कुराहरुमा यो मैले नपरेको कारणले गर्दा मैले तपाईलाई जस्ट शेयर मात्रै गरिरहेको छु। यो तपाईले सेल्फ स्टडी गर्नुस्, अनि त्यसपछि यो कुराहरुलाई चाहिँ यसरी चाहिँ आउन सक्छ भन्ने कुराहरुलाई चाहिँ यो तपाईलाई चाहिँ देखाउन खोजिरहेको छु। मैले तपाईलाई चाहिँ त्यो कुरा त्यसरी चाहिँ मैले तपाईलाई चाहिँ शेयर गरिरहेको छु। यसमा तपाईको आफ्नो कुराहरु पनि यहाँनिर तपाईले चाहिँ थप्न अझ तपाईले पढेर चाहिँ थप्न पनि सक्नुहुन्छ, किनकि जस्टिफाई योर आन्सर विथ सम एक्जाम्पल्स भनेको छ। यो चाहिँ तपाईले चाहिँ अझ त्यो टेक्स्ट पढेर अझ बाहिरी कुराहरु सर्च गरेर पनि तपाईले चाहिँ यसलाई चाहिँ योलाई त्यसरी चाहिँ तपाईले पढ्न सक्नुहुन्छ र त्यसरी तपाईले नोट पनि बनाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। त्यसैगरी अर्को यहाँनिर ईमा रहेको छ, discuss some major events that have made a significant distribution to the growth of English vocabulary. Discuss some major events that have made a significant distribution to the growth of English vocabulary. During World English period, the speakers of World English faced rival groups speaking languages, which often had a lasting effect on the vocabulary of English. The influential languages then were Celtic, Latin, and Old Norse. In the Middle English period, there were enormous additions to vocabulary from French. French words were taken into English massively in law and administration as well as the military. During Modern English period, changes in vocabulary can be attributed to the intellectual expansion of the Renaissance as well as the age of discovery, imperialism, and colonialism on a world scale, and the movement of people from the British Isles and the rest of Europe outward, as well as the immigration of people from the Empire Commonwealth to British Isles. त्यसैगरी यहाँनिर एफ नम्बरमा रहेको छ, In modern English, we can express the same idea in different words. This is because English has over the centuries absorbed words from many different languages. Explain this with examples from the passage. The vocabulary of English started with an Indo-European inventory of words. Possibly 35% of the non-technical word of English and the majority of the most common ones are Germanic. During Old English period, the speakers of Old English faced rival groups speaking language which often had a lasting effect on the vocabulary of English. The influential languages then were Celtic, Latin, and Old Norse. During the Middle English period, French words were massively taken into English. We can express the same idea in different forms in modern English because English is very rich in synonyms. It has been rightly said that there are synonyms at each level: popular, literary, and learned. त्यसैगरी यहाँ अन्तिम यो जी नम्बरमा राखेको छ, क्यान यु कम्पेयर even distantly the situation of Nepali language with that old English discuss? Can we compare even distantly the situation of Nepali language with that one English discuss? यो चाहिँ क्वेशन रहेको छ. The language situation is Nepali is indeed very complex. Nepali language is the national language of Nepal. It is the language of administration and education in Nepal. There are many areas of Tarai and elsewhere where Nepali remains a minority language. It is worthless to compare the situation of Nepali language with that of English. English deserves to be regarded as a world language. It is the world's most widely spoken language. It is common means of communication between the people of different nations. It is the language of international organizations like UNO, WHO, etc. यो चाहिँ क्वेशन नम्बर जी रहेको छ. अनि त्यसपछि यो लेसन 6 को द सोर्सेस अफ इंग्लिश भोकाबुलरी. यो चाहिँ खासमा चाहिँ सोर्सेस अफ इंग्लिश भोकाबुलरी, यो इंग्लिश भोकाबुलरी को बारेमा यो टेक्स्ट रहेको छ. तपाईहरुले चाहिँ यस्तो डिफिकल्ट अलि नबुझ्ने खाले लेसनहरु छ भने चाहिँ तपाईले चाहिँ दुई तीन चोटी तपाईले चाहिँ पढेर बाहिरी सर्च पनि गरेर हैन, नेटमा सर्च पनि गरेर त्यो प्रकारले पनि तपाईले चाहिँ हेर्नु भयो भने तपाईलाई चाहिँ यो कुराहरु चाहिँ तपाईलाई चाहिँ सजिलै लाग्छ. क्वेशनहरु तपाईलाई चाहिँ सजिलै तपाईले चाहिँ त्यसको आन्सरहरु दिन सक्नुहुन्छ. हुन्छ, आज मैले तपाईलाई लेसन 5 र 6 को चाहिँ मैले तपाईलाई चाहिँ केही सल्भ गरेका क्वेशनहरु मैले तपाईलाई चाहिँ शेयर गरे. तपाईहरुले टेक्स्ट बुकमा भएको क्वेशनहरु पनि तपाईले चाहिँ सल्भ गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. हुन्छ, आजलाई यति नै. मैले तपाईलाई यो लेसन 5 र 6 को मैले तपाईलाई चाहिँ यो सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु शेयर गरे. आउने समयमा म अरु बाँकी रहेको लेसनको पनि म तपाईलाई चाहिँ यसरी नै शेयर गर्ने छु र सबै युनिटहरुको म यसरी नै तपाईलाई चाहिँ सल्भ गरेको क्वेशनहरु म तपाईलाई शेयर गर्ने छु. मेन पोइन्ट्सहरु म तपाईलाई शेयर गर्ने छु. अनि त्यसैगरी समरीहरु म तपाईलाई चाँडोभन्दा चाँडो शेयर गर्ने छु. तबसम्म मेरो भिडियोले तपाईले चाहिँ लाइक गरिदिनु होला. अनि त्यसपछि यो भिडियोले तपाई साथीहरु माझ पनि शेयर गरिदिनु होला. र मेरो च्यानललाई अहिलेसम्म पनि तपाईले सब्स्क्राइब गर्नु भएको छैन भने तपाईहरुले मेरो च्यानललाई सब्स्क्राइब पनि गरिदिनु होला.